Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. Please pardon my appearance. You guys know I generally film these videos very late at night, generally after 12 midnight. This particular video is being recorded, give you the exact time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So with that being said, we are going to start talking about a lot of acquisitions and consolidations within the antiques and collectibles trade. I've said this before, I'll say it again. This happened back in the 80s, in the early 90s to a certain extent, with a lot of high-profile collectibles and antiques selling for high-value amounts. There's a lot of businesses, individuals, and of course, corporations, whether it be auction houses, graded companies, and the like, that want to get in on the action. And they're doing a lot of the same things, I should say same shenanigans, they were doing back in the 80s and even the 1990s. So we are going to go through this. This is a very important topic. Today we're going to be talking about Christie's, the auction house, launches Department X as collectible sneakers and streetwear boom. For those unaware, I'm very knowledgeable in finance. I subscribe to a lot of financial publications and also websites, and I am a big fan of CNBC. And on September 26, 2022, this particular article that we're going to go over today caught my eye, and it was written by Robert Frank. And again, it is discussing this particular decision of Christie's auction house to launch Department X, solely geared towards collectible sneakers and streetwear. Now, we have to talk about this a little bit because this is a monumental move on behalf of Christie's. Because up until this point, Christie's dabbled a little bit in a lot of these pop culture markets. But overall, they cater to the high-end art, high-end antique markets, much like Sotheby's. Now they are trying to expand into the collectible space because they see a lot of people out there are willing to pay high 6, low 7, even mid 7 digits for some of these collectibles at present time. So I do want to go through this article. Again, there'll be a link to this article in the video description below. In case you want to click on it, you want to read it yourself. So these are the key points of the article, and then I'm going to read it. Department X will sell rare collectibles across music, fashion, art, and sports history. But sneakers and streetwear will be among its biggest categories. Now, let's comment on that a little bit. I have spoken to this in the past. I do not like the collectibles market for what they call clothing, is known in the trade as textiles. I do not like that market by and large, simply because anything like textiles, anything like sneakers, anything that's meant to be worn and is mass-produced and meant to be worn, pretty much breaks down over time. If you don't believe me, contact any vintage Nike Air collector. Anybody will tell you sneakers from the 1990s, especially if they're white, they're starting to yellow. The foam that they're made from, it's already starting to break down. And I touched on this in other videos. I am not a fan of this market. That said, I do understand that a lot of younger collectors are drawn to this market, and there's a lot of big money betting that this is going to be one of the next big things in the antiques and collectibles trade. Now, the statement, the next big thing, doesn't really mean anything anymore, because we could say that about graded video games. We could say that about graded VHS tapes. Pretty much all these markets are booming because there's so much money moving into alternate asset classes at present time. That's why I argue with a lot of you guys that are trying to covet, collect, and invest in this stuff. Right now, if some of these markets are going to pop, now's your time to sell. Now is your time to profit from the trend. Remember, guys, you don't buy into the hype. You sell into the hype. You let somebody else worry about it. Somebody wants to give you, I'm just going to use this as a round number that we can all relate to. If you spend $1,000 on an item and somebody's willing to give you $2,000 or $3,000 for that item, take the money. Let them worry about if that item's going to go to $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 or more. You guys have got to be smart as to how you analyze markets in the antiques and collectibles trade, especially during times of boom and times of mass speculation. A lot of you guys are getting this entirely wrong. You're making very bad mistakes that are going to cost you a fortune sometime in the future. Now, going back to this, The move is the latest sign that a wave of younger collectors are redefining the collectibles world. Well, that's true. Look at the prices for certain Pokemon cards, certain vintage video games, even comic books to a lesser extent. Now, I do argue a little bit that comic books are almost at the same demographics of coins. There is a 5-year difference between coin collectors and your average comic book collector. Believe it or not, baby boomers and Gen Xers pretty much control the comic marketplace at present time, just like baby boomers and Gen Xers control the coin collecting market at present time. There is, off of every study, off of every statistic I could find, a roughly 5-year difference in the average age of high-profile comic book collectors, comparing them to coin collectors, meaning the average comic book collector is only 5 years younger on average. And I know a lot of you guys don't want to believe that. All the evidence is there. If you don't believe me, do your own research. The demographics do not lie. The first Overstreet comic book price guide was published and came to market in 1970. Before that, believe it or not, as early as 1965, people were avidly collecting comic books. This is why I tell you guys, if you're attempting to invest in comic books long term, not to get off on a tangent here, you have to go after Silver Age or earlier is your best bet. I know a lot of you guys love to argue with me. No, Sean, I'm going after my Amazing Spider-Man 129, my Incredible Hulk 181, my X-Men 94. You need to understand that those books were hoarded in mass. The reason why they are valuable today is simply because of demand and the fact that there have been multiple catalysts that opened up in that market where people came in and said, oh, this Incredible Hulk 181 is the first appearance of Wolverine. Well, if you check the CGC census, how many copies are out there versus that of an early key issue of Strange Tales or Tales of Suspense or, of course, Amazing Fantasy 15? This is something that you guys got to understand. You've got to look at the available supply and the demand and what's driving that demand at present time. Right now, comic books are in vogue. Comic books are everywhere thanks to Marvel's handling of the cinematic universe, which is now controlled by Disney. So let's go on. Sotheby's this month sold Michael Jordan's Last Dance jersey for $10.1 million, setting a new record for sports memorabilia. And I did comment on this trend in the video where I talk about the incredible record-breaking price paid for the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card, where people are now spending incredible sums on sports memorabilia. Make no mistake, if you are going to get into the market for sports memorabilia, you want vintage. You want preferably a lot of the pre-1980, preferably pre-1970, if you can afford it, items if you're trying to invest long-term in those particular markets. Now, Christie's is launching a new department to capitalize on the booming market for collectible sneakers, streetwear, and sports history. The auction house on Monday announced its Department X, love the name, giving Air Jordans and Supreme skate decks their own category alongside impressionistic and modern art and old masters. Remember, guys, both Christie's and Sotheby's, their bread and butter is the high-end art market, along with antiques and historical artifacts, antique furniture, historical documents, and, of course, pieces of very valuable, rare, one-of-a-kind artwork. The move is the latest sign that a wave of younger collectors are redefining the collectibles world. When looking at the auction world and the way collectors are evolving and the new collectors coming into the marketplace, we felt this is a strong and robust market, said Christie's head of handbags, streetwear, and sneakers, who will head Department X. I cannot pronounce his name. I think it's Caitlin Donovan, I believe, is this individual's name. I'm horrible with names, so sometimes I just skip over them. I apologize, guys. It's only going to get stronger, and that's why we felt it was time to dive headfirst into this new market. Now, to be fair, Hermes Birkin Bags have been making headwaves within the last 10 years as well. And the auction company that pretty much has a lock on that market right now is Heritage Auctions. My ex, I don't want to say girlfriend, but the last girl that I dated was really big in the Hermes Birkin bags. And she was shocked that I knew all about them and all about heritage auctions because, believe it or not, she would go on heritage auctions and she would partake in those particular auctions that catered to those particular items. She was a lawyer. She lived in Center City, Philly, and she could afford to do that based on what she earned. And she had quite a valuable collection of Hermes Birkin bags. So, going back to the article, Department X will sell rare collectibles across music, fashion, art, and sports history, but sneakers and streetwear will be among its biggest categories. It will hold online auctions with live previews in New York and private selling expositions throughout the year. That is important, guys. That is becoming a thing. What I don't like about private selling expositions is that it's really not for public knowledge. So if somebody comes out and says, hey, we just sold this particular piece for X number of dollars, even if it's not at auction, there's more doubt in my mind that it was a legit sale. Now, of course, you can always say, well, Sean, look at auction numbers. They're not always legit. Somebody can bid something up and not pay for it. There could be market manipulation going on behind the scenes. That's true. But usually I'm more keen to trust numbers that come from auction companies that are being displayed on a lot of these high-profile company sites than I am of somebody telling me, hey, that particular item over there sold for $3 million. Therefore, that's a new record price, and we all have to rally behind it. I don't like that type of lack of transparency, to use that terminology if I can, in this scenario. Sneakers and sports collectibles have exploded in popularity and value in recent years. In June, Christie's held a 6 Rings Legacy of the GOAT sale dedicated to basketball legend Michael Jordan's career, with sales nearing $1.5 million. And Sotheby's this month sold Jordan's Last Dance jersey from his 1998 NBA Finals Game 1 for $10.1 million, setting a new record for sports memorabilia. A collection of 200 pairs of Louis Vuitton and Nike Air Force One sneakers designed by the late designer, again, I'm horrible with names, Virgil Abloh, sold at Sotheby's early this year for $25 million. That was more than 8 times the estimate, with one pair selling for $350,000. Sotheby's launched its streetwear category in December, with most of the buyers between 20 and 40 years old, and 80% of bidders new to the auction house. As part of its Department X launch, Christie's will hold a private sale exhibit titled Yeewalks, celebrating 2 pairs of Kanye West's sneakers design. God help us all. The Nike Air Yeezy 1 prototype was the first West designed with Nike. The Nike Donda West Air Jordan 6 was created of West's mother in her memory. Hats, shirts, skate decks, and even pinball machines from Supreme have also continued to soar in price. Now, I do want to comment on this. I honestly think the hysteria surrounding Supreme products is completely insane. I know I'm going to get heat for that because there's a lot of you out there that love their products, but I'm just going to state this. They are simply using branding and mass-produced scarcity to sell you these products. I do not consider Supreme in the same league as Rolex, as Hermes, as Gucci even. A lot of what Supreme is doing is simply marketing to a more affluent mindset. Now, does that mean maybe 10, 20 years out, certain vintage Supreme products don't accelerate in value? That could happen. But overall, if you were to come to me and say, Sean, I'm thinking of either going after Hermes or possibly Rolex, but I also really love Supreme, I would tell you, if you're a young woman or if you're a woman and you have the money and means to invest in Hermes Birkin bags, that's a good market. Just like if you do have the money and the means to invest in a vintage Rolex, that's a good market to get into. With that being said, I do not put Supreme on that same plateau, on that same caliber. Going back to the article, in 2020, Christie's offered a collection of 253 Supreme t-shirts for $2 million. That is insane, guys. Christie said younger collectors gravitate to the images and culture they grew up with. That is 100% true. Streetwear, rare sneakers, and memorabilia tied to sports icons are likely to grow in value as younger collectors gain wealth. That is a possibility. I would not be banking on it. Again, if you are not financially established, if you do not have the means to go after these items, please do not stretch to get them. You are better off investing in traditional financial assets first. Then when you get financially established, if you want to play, you want to diversify in this market, feel free to do what you will. But I will tell you, I would cap that at roughly 20% of your entire net worth. So for instance, if you're just starting out in life, let's say that you get into your 30s, and I'm just going to use a simple example here. You add up all your assets and all your liabilities, and you say, you know what? I'm worth at least $100,000. What that means is you should have no more than $20,000 invested in antiques and collectibles and other alternate asset classes. So you guys out there that like cryptocurrency, that's also a part of that number. Most of your net worth should be tied up into traditional financial assets along with real estate. Going on, we go for what tugs at our own past experiences and heartstrings. That is very true. That's nostalgia at play. I did a video on why nostalgia is a lie. You can check that out. It is a very interesting look at certain markets and why people fathom them, given the fact that they grew up with those particular items and those particular objects by their side. But make no mistake, it is a psychological minefield. It is a psychological, I want to say fuckery in this instance. I guess I can, given the fact that I'm about 17 minutes into this video. That's really all it is. Nostalgia is not real, guys. It is an interpretation and a longing of something that you are attached to, nothing more. So for these collectors in their 30s and 40s, it's a celebration of their culture. And yes, that is true. There's a lot of things that I like simply because I grew up with those particular items. It's not that they were that paramount in my life. It's just simply they were there when I was younger, and as a result, I relate my youth to those particular objects in question. Finishing the article, some collectors say six-figure sneakers and t-shirts are a product of a speculative bubble. But Christie's said the rise of so-called hypeware is likely to endure despite falling stocks and recession fears, which is 100% stupid because I've said this, if you're young, seeing the stock market in free fall, if you're buying index-based mutual funds or ETFs, you should acquire more because you have a lot longer to go until you retire, until you need that money. And you can pretty much lock in higher returns by buying low and selling high. This is why I always preach to a lot of the younger people that watch this video or this channel in their 20s and 30s, even in their 40s, my age included, you would be better off in most cases investing in a good old-fashioned total stock market index fund, an S&P 500 index fund, than trying to place a bet on some of these Supreme products, some of these sneakers, some of this streetwear that is now selling for big bucks. At some point, this market is going to either plateau or it's going to bottom out, and you're going to be left holding the proverbial bag. And I'm going to end this video this way. If you are left holding the proverbial bag at present time, you better hope it's an Hermes Birkin bag. Thank you for watching. Hope you got something out of this. Let me know your thoughts and feedback in the comment section below.